girl arranged the restaurant tables in secret until the owner discovered her and changed her life. Michael Roberts felt the weight of loneliness every morning when he opened the doors of his restaurant in downtown San Diego. At 52, the gray-haired man had dedicated himself so much to the business that he forgot to live, and now the establishment was all he had. For months, he'd arrive early and find something strange. The tables were arranged differently than he'd left them the night before. The napkins folded into perfect swans, the silverware aligned with precision that even his most experienced staff couldn't match, and there was always that faint scent of lavender in the air. "Mrs. Susan, did you come in early today?" he asked his head cook on Monday morning. "No, Mr. Michael. I just got here, same as always," replied the 63-year-old woman who had worked with him for 15 years. Michael looked at the tables again. Impossible. No one but him and Susan had keys to the restaurant. Yet, there were the napkins folded into swans, something none of his employees knew how to do. He'd learned that technique years ago, when he still dreamed of owning an upscale restaurant. All that week, the same thing happened. Michael started arriving earlier and earlier, but he never caught whoever was responsible for the mysterious setup. The tables were always perfect when he arrived, as if an organizing angel had passed through overnight. On Thursday, he checked for signs of a break-in. Nothing. The doors were intact, the windows locked, the cash register untouched. But the tables remained impeccably arranged, and the lavender scent lingered. Susan noticed her boss's unease. "Mr. Michael, you've been so tense lately. Maybe you should relax a little. It could be one of the night shift employees doing this." "No, Susan. I locked up myself last night, and you know none of them can make these swans." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. On Friday, Michael was determined to uncover the truth. He arrived at the restaurant at 4 in the morning, an hour earlier than usual. The place was dark and locked, just as he'd left it. But when he turned on the lights, there they were again, the perfectly set tables. This time, though, something was different. One of the napkins had fallen to the floor near the back door. Michael approached and noticed the door, usually secured with 2 bolts, had only one locked. Someone had been there recently. His heart raced. There was no way someone had a copy of the key without his knowledge. He checked every lock, searched for signs of forced entry, but found nothing. Whoever this person was, they had legitimate access to the restaurant. Over the weekend, curiosity gnawed at him. Michael barely slept, wondering who could be behind these mysterious arrangements. By Monday morning, he was determined to arrive even earlier. At 3:30 a.m., he parked his car a block away and walked silently down the empty street. The light rain from the night before left the pavement glistening under the streetlights. As he neared the restaurant, he spotted a soft glow coming from the kitchen. Michael's pulse quickened. He was finally going to find out who had been sneaking into his restaurant. He crept to the side window and peered inside. What he saw left him completely stunned. A young woman, around 20 years old, with dark hair tied in a ponytail and wearing a faded greenish-gray coat, was arranging the tables with delicate, precise movements. She folded each napkin as if it were a work of art, aligned the silverware with an imaginary ruler, and spritzed a spray on the tablecloths. The girl seemed to know every inch of the restaurant. She moved with familiarity, knowing exactly where to find each item. But what caught Michael's attention the most was the expression on her face. There was a deep sadness in her eyes, as if this ritual were her way of connecting with something very important. Michael watched for a few more minutes, fascinated by the young woman's dedication. She wasn't stealing anything, wasn't causing any damage. On the contrary, she was caring for the place with a tenderness he himself rarely showed. When the girl finished setting the last table, she headed toward the back door. That's when Michael decided to confront her. He hurried around the side of the building and reached the back door just as she was stepping out. "Hey!" he shouted, louder than he intended. The young woman was so startled she dropped the bottle of lavender spray. Her eyes widened in fear, and she took a few steps back, visibly trembling. "Please don't call the police," she said. Her voice choked, tears already beginning to fall. "I didn't break anything, didn't take anything, I swear." Michael was taken aback by her reaction. He had expected to find a thief or a vandal, but the young woman seemed like a frightened child. "Who are you? How did you get into my restaurant?" he asked, trying to keep his voice firm but unable to hide his curiosity. "My name is Emily. Emily Thompson," she answered, wiping her tears with the sleeve of her coat. I worked here 2 years ago." Michael tried to remember. 2 years ago had been a tough time for the restaurant. The pandemic had forced him to cut costs and let go of several employees, but he didn't recall an Emily. "You worked here in what role?" "I was an overnight cleaning assistant. I only worked for 3 months, but they were the best 3 months of my life," Emily said, her voice still shaky. "When you had to let me go, I understood. I knew it wasn't personal." Now Michael vaguely began to remember. During the cuts, he had laid off several employees at once, many of whom he barely knew personally. The young Emily might well have worked for him. "But that doesn't explain how you're getting in here. I changed all the locks after the pandemic." Emily lowered her eyes, clearly ashamed. "Susan gave me a copy of the key. She knew I was going through a hard time, and she thought it wouldn't hurt if I kept helping out a little." Michael felt a mix of anger and confusion. Susan had given a restaurant key to a former employee without consulting him. That was a serious breach of trust. "Susan did that?" he asked, disbelieving. "Please don't be mad at her. It's all my fault. I was the one who insisted," Emily said quickly, afraid she'd gotten the cook in trouble. "She just wanted to help me." "Help you with what exactly?" Emily hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much of the truth to tell. "I live in a rented room with my Grandma Betty. She's 81 and needs special care. I take care of her during the day and sell crafts in the square at night to pay the bills." Michael studied the young woman more closely. Her coat was worn, her clothes simple but clean. There was a dignity in her posture despite the awkward situation. "But that still doesn't explain why you come here to set the tables in the middle of the night." Emily took a deep breath, as if about to reveal something deeply personal. "When I worked here, even though I was just a cleaning assistant, I felt important, useful. It was the first time in my life I had a place where I felt I belonged," she said, her voice growing more emotional. "After I left, I couldn't stop thinking about the restaurant. I dreamed about it." "So you decided to come back secretly?" "At first, I'd just walk by and look. But one day, about 3 weeks ago, I saw you'd left the back door unlocked. I came in just to take a look, to remember the good times, and when I saw all the messy tables, I couldn't resist. I started straightening them." Michael shook his head, trying to process all this. "And the lavender?" "It was the scent I missed the most. You always used to spray lavender on the towels when I worked here. I thought I should keep doing it." The rain had stopped, but the air was still damp and cold. Emily was shivering, more from nerves than the chill, waiting for Michael's reaction. "Emily, you do realize this is trespassing, right? I could call the police." "I know," she said, lowering her eyes again, "and I'd understand if you did. I just missed this place." Michael stayed silent for a few seconds, watching the young woman. There was something about her story that didn't quite add up, but he couldn't put his finger on it. "Where do you and your grandmother live?" "In a boarding house over on Harbour Street. Mrs. Wilkins rents out small rooms. Ours only has a shared bathroom down the hall." "And your grandmother is sick?" "She has diabetes and high blood pressure. She needs expensive medicine and can't get around very well. That's why I can't work anywhere too far during the day." Michael began to understand Emily's situation better. The young woman was clearly facing serious financial struggles, caring for an elderly grandmother, and had found some kind of emotional comfort in secretly returning to the restaurant. "And the napkins? How did you learn to make the swans?" Emily smiled timidly for the first time. "You taught me. One night when I was cleaning, you stayed late doing the books and showed me how to fold them. You said it was a special technique that made the restaurant more elegant." Michael vaguely remembered that night. He'd been particularly stressed about finances and had found Emily cleaning the tables. In an attempt to distract himself, he really had taught her how to fold napkins. "Emily, what exactly do you do when you come here?" "I just tidy up the tables, fold the napkins, straighten the silverware, spray lavender on the towels and leave. I never touch anything else, never open the register, never take food. I just fix the tables. Every night? Not every night. About 3 times a week. On the days I can sneak out without waking my grandma. Michael was torn between irritation at the trespassing and an odd compassion for the young woman's situation. Something in her story resonated with him, though he couldn't quite place what. Emily, you'll have to give me back the key, and you can't come in here secretly anymore. I know, she said, pulling the key from her pocket and handing it to him. I'm sorry for causing trouble. And please, don't fire Susan, she was just trying to help me. Michael took the key and watched Emily for a few more seconds. The young woman seemed genuinely remorseful, but there was also a deep sadness in her eyes that went beyond the current situation. I'll talk to Susan, but now you need to go home. Emily nodded and turned to leave. After a few steps, she turned back. Mr. Michael, thank you for not calling the police. And thank you for the 3 months I worked here. They were the best of my life. Michael stood at the back door, watching Emily walk away down the still empty street. There was something about that whole story that wouldn't leave his mind. The young woman seemed genuine, but there were also details that didn't add up. When he entered the restaurant, the tables were impeccable as always. But now, knowing who was responsible, Michael observed the work with new eyes. There was a care there that went beyond professionalism. It was personal, intimate. At 6 in the morning, Susan arrived as usual. Michael was waiting for her in the kitchen, his face serious. Susan, we need to talk. Good morning, Mr. Michael. Did something happen? Did you give a copy of the restaurant key to Emily Thompson? Susan froze mid-motion as she tied her apron. Her expression immediately confirmed her guilt. Mr. Michael, I can explain. I hope so. Because I caught her here at 4 in the morning setting the tables. Susan let out a deep sigh and sat in one of the kitchen chairs. She came to me about 3 weeks ago. She was desperate, Mr. Michael. Her grandmother needed money for medicine, and they didn't even have enough to eat properly. And you thought giving her a key to the restaurant was the solution? No, it wasn't like that. Emily didn't ask for the key. She just asked if there was any cleaning work she could do, even for free, just to feel useful again. Susan spoke quickly, trying to explain. She said she missed working, that selling crafts in the square was too uncertain. Michael crossed his arms, waiting for the rest of the explanation. I told her there was no work, but I felt sorry for her. Emily was always such a dedicated girl when she worked here. Never late, never complained about anything. And when you had to let her go, I could see how heartbroken she was. And the key. I thought if she came just to set the tables early in the morning when no one was around, it wouldn't hurt. It was a way for her to feel useful and for us to always have the tables perfectly set. Michael shook his head, clearly irritated. Susan, you gave a key to my restaurant to a former employee without consulting me and thought there was no problem. I know it was wrong, Mr. Michael, but the girl was so desperate, and she would never steal or cause trouble. Emily isn't like that. How can you be so sure? Susan hesitated for a moment, as if deciding whether to say more. Because I know her story, Mr. Michael. Emily isn't just any former employee. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. What do you mean by that? Remember when you told me your father found an abandoned baby here at the restaurant about 20 years ago? Michael felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. His mind began making connections he didn't want to accept. Susan, what are you implying? Emily was born 20 years ago, Mr. Michael, and she was adopted as a baby. That doesn't mean anything. Lots of children are adopted. Susan stood up and went to a kitchen cabinet. From there, she pulled out a yellowed envelope hidden behind some cans. Your father asked me to keep this. He said, if the girl ever came back, I should give it to her. Michael took the envelope with trembling hands. Written in his father's handwriting was, to the girl who brought light to our restaurant. Susan, why did you never tell me this? Your father made me promise I'd only say something if the girl showed up. And when Emily came to work here 2 years ago, I knew it was her. How did you know? The birthmark on her left wrist. Your father described it in detail when he gave me the envelope. Michael sank heavily into a chair. Throughout his life, his father had told the story of the baby girl found abandoned at the restaurant. It was a story that deeply marked the old man, who always wondered what had happened to the child after she was given up for adoption. "Why didn't you tell me when she started working here?" "Because she didn't know her own story yet, and your father told me to wait for the right moment." "And you thought the right moment was when she turned into a trespasser at the restaurant?" Susan sighed again. "Mr. Michael, Emily started asking questions a few weeks ago. She asked if I knew the history of the restaurant, if I had any information about abandoned babies. I think she discovered something about her past." Michael opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter from his father and some black and white photos. The first photo showed a baby girl just a few months old in the arms of a younger man whom Michael recognized as his father. The photo had been taken in the main dining area of the restaurant, exactly where the main table stood today. The letter was written in his father's careful handwriting. "My dear girl, if you're reading this letter, it means fate has brought you back home. 20 years ago, when I found you in this very place where I now write, I knew you were special. You didn't cry like other babies. You stayed in my arms as if you knew you were safe. I took care of you for 3 months until I could find an adoptive family who could give you the love and life you deserved. It was the hardest decision of my life. Every day, I wondered if I was doing the right thing. I opened a bank account in your name. Every month for these 20 years, I deposited a small amount, hoping one day you'd return home. The account number is on the back of this letter. If you're reading this, it means you've found your way back to where you've always belonged. This restaurant has always been your home, my girl, from the very first day. With all the love in the world, Robert Roberts." Michael finished reading the letter with tears in his eyes. In the other photos, he saw his father caring for the baby, feeding her a bottle, changing her diapers. There was a photo of the child sleeping in a makeshift bassinet in the restaurant's office. "Susan, my father took care of Emily for 3 months here at the restaurant." "Yes, I was young back then, just starting to work here. Your father couldn't bear to part with her. He said she brought life to this place." "And why did he finally give her up for adoption?" "Because he was a widower, working all day, and he didn't think he could give her the attention she deserved. But he never stopped thinking about her." Michael looked at the photos again. In the last one, his father was holding the baby at the restaurant's entrance, both looking at the camera. The expression on his face was that of someone about to lose something very precious. "Does Emily know all this?" "Not completely. She knows she was adopted and is looking into her origins, but she doesn't know your father raised her here for 3 months." "What about the adoptive family?" "According to your father, they were good people. They gave her an education, love, and care. But when Emily turned 18, they told her she was adopted and gave her some information about her past." Michael tried to process everything. Emily wasn't just a troublesome former employee. She was the baby his father had cared for, like a daughter. The child the old man had loved and spoken of until his last days. "Susan, where are Emily's adoptive parents now?" "They passed away in a car accident 2 years ago. It was right after she started working here. Emily was left alone in the world, with only her adoptive parents' maternal grandmother. Now everything was starting to make sense. Emily had come to work at the restaurant by coincidence, shortly after losing her adoptive parents. And Susan, knowing her true identity, had formed a special connection with her. That's why you gave her the key. That's why, and because I saw how she behaved here. Emily always treated this place as if it were her home. Even when she was just a cleaning assistant, she took care of every detail as if it were the most important place in the world." Michael stood up and walked around the kitchen, trying to gather his thoughts. It was all too much to process at once. "Mr. Michael, what are you going to do?" "I don't know, Susan. I need to think." Throughout that day, Michael worked mechanically. He served customers, talked to suppliers, supervised the kitchen, but his mind was entirely focused on Emily and the revelation he had received. At night, after all the employees had left, Michael stayed alone in the restaurant, looking at the photos his father had left behind. In the last photo, baby Emily was asleep on the main table, the same table she now secretly arranged every night. It couldn't be a coincidence. Somehow, Emily had been drawn back to the place where she had spent the first months of her life. The place where she had been loved and cared for by his father. Michael decided he needed to talk to Emily again, but this time it would be different. He wouldn't confront her as an intruder. He would speak to her as the girl his father had loved like a daughter. The next morning, Michael arrived at the restaurant earlier than usual. The tables were disheveled, exactly as he had left them the night before. Emily had kept her word and hadn't returned, but all day he couldn't stop thinking about her. Where was she? How was she feeling? Did she regret telling her story? In the afternoon, Michael decided to look for Emily. He only knew she lived in a boarding house near the harbour and sold handmade crafts in the square. It wouldn't be hard to find her. The boarding house where Emily lived was on a narrow, busy street. The building was old and needed repairs, but it looked clean and orderly. Michael knocked on the door and was greeted by a middle-aged woman. "Good afternoon, I'm looking for Emily Thompson." "Emily? She left early today. She's probably at the square selling her crafts." "Do you know if she comes back for lunch?" "No, she only comes back at night. She has to stay at the square all day to sell anything." Michael thanked her and headed to the city's central square. It didn't take long to find Emily. She was sitting on a low stool with various handmade crafts spread out on a towel on the ground. Necklaces, bracelets, coasters, small decorative items. Emily was focused on making a beaded bracelet when she saw Michael approaching. Immediately, her face tightened with worry. "Mr. Michael, is something wrong? Can I sit down? We need to talk." Emily made room for him on the stool. A few curious passers-by glanced at the crafts, but the square was relatively empty at that hour. "Emily, I spoke with Susan this morning. Are you going to fire her? Please don't. It was all my fault." "I'm not firing Susan, but she told me some things about you that I need to understand better." Emily stopped working on the bracelet and looked directly at Michael. "What did she say?" "She said you've been investigating your origins." Emily sighed and lowered her eyes. "It's true. Ever since my parents passed, I've had so many unanswered questions. They were always very vague about my adoption." "And what have you found out?" "That I was found abandoned in San Diego, at a business. That I stayed somewhere for a few months before being given to my adoptive parents. But I couldn't find many details." Michael took a deep breath. The moment had come to reveal the truth. "Emily, the place where you were found was my restaurant." Emily stopped what she was doing completely and looked at Michael in disbelief. "What do you mean?" "You were found abandoned at my restaurant 20 years ago. My father, Robert Roberts, took care of you for 3 months before finding an adoptive family." Emily fell silent for a few seconds, processing the information. "Your father took care of me? For 3 months, you practically lived at the restaurant. My father fell in love with you from the very first day." Tears began to stream down Emily's face. "That's why I felt so at home there. That's why I kept sneaking back. I knew there was some kind of connection, but I couldn't understand what it was." Michael pulled the envelope from his pocket, the one Mrs. Susan had kept all these years. "My father left this for you." Emily took the envelope with trembling hands. When she saw the first photo, a man holding a baby in the exact same room of the restaurant, she began to cry even harder. "This man, is this your father?" "Yes." "And this baby is you?" Emily examined each photo carefully, as if trying to recover lost memories. When she reached the letter, she read silently, tears falling onto the paper. He opened an account for me. According to the letter, yes, for 20 years he deposited money, hoping you'd come back." Emily finished reading the letter and stayed quiet for a few minutes, still holding the photos. "Mr. Michael, why did your father give me up for adoption if he loved me so much?" "Because he was a widower, working all day at the restaurant, and he didn't think he could give you the life you deserved. But Mrs. Susan told me it was the hardest decision he ever made." "And my adoptive parents, did they know about all this?" "I don't know the details, but from what Mrs. Susan told me, they were wonderful people who gave you so much love and opportunity." Emily nodded. "They did. They gave me everything they could, education, affection, values. I could never complain about them." But when they passed away, you were left alone and started searching for your roots. Exactly. And without understanding why, I felt drawn back to San Diego, to this area. When I got the job at the restaurant 2 years ago, it was the first time I felt at home since losing my parents. Michael watched as Emily looked at the photos again. There was a peace in her expression he hadn't seen the night before. Emily, now I understand why you kept sneaking back to the restaurant. Somehow you knew you belonged there. It's like the walls spoke to me. Like every corner held a memory I couldn't quite reach but knew was there. And the lavender? Emily smiled for the first time. I've always loved that scent. Ever since I was little, my adoptive mother thought it was strange because she never used lavender products at home, but to me it smelled like safety. Michael felt a lump in his throat. His father had always used lavender in the restaurant, even before Emily appeared. It was his signature touch, something he believed made the place more welcoming. Emily, my father talked about you until his last days. He always wondered if he'd done the right thing, if you were okay, if you were happy. And now? Now you've come home. Emily looked around Central Square as if seeing it with new eyes. Mr. Michael, what does this mean? What happens now? I don't know yet, but I do know you can't keep living off selling crafts in the square when there's a bank account waiting for you for 20 years. And the account, it's really there? Let's find out together. Michael and Emily walked to the bank mentioned in the letter. The manager, after verifying all the documents and confirming Emily's identity, confirmed the account existed, with a considerable sum deposited. Miss Emily, this account has 20 years of monthly deposits. The current balance with interest is approximately $42,000. Emily looked at Michael in shock. $42,000? Her father had religiously made the deposit every month. Even during the toughest times for the restaurant, he never missed a payment. Emily began to cry again, but this time they were tears of emotion and gratitude. Now I can take better care of my grandma. I can buy her medicine without worrying. Emily, there's something I haven't asked you yet. What do you really want in life? Emily thought for a moment. I want a place where I feel useful, where I can make a difference in people's lives. And I want to take care of my grandma, who took me in when I was alone. What if I offered you a job at the restaurant? Mr. Michael, after everything that happened, after I broke in... Emily, you didn't break in. You came home. Over the following days, Michael and Emily talked at length about their lives, their stories, their losses. Michael spoke of the loneliness he'd felt since losing his father, how the restaurant had become just a soulless business. Emily shared the struggles of caring for her grandmother alone, how lost she felt in the world without a true family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Now, back to the story. Susan was moved when she learned the truth had finally been revealed. She confessed that keeping that secret for so long had been a burden, but she always believed fate would bring Emily back. I knew she'd return, Susan said. The way she cared for things here, the affection she showed, it was like she never left. Michael offered Emily a position as general supervisor of the restaurant. She would oversee every detail, ensuring flawless service and maintaining the warmth that had defined the place in his father's time. But I don't have management experience, Emily said. You have something more important than experience. You have love for this place. The rest can be learned. Emily accepted the offer, but had one condition. She wanted to bring her grandmother to live in an apartment near the restaurant so she could care for her better. With the money from the account Robert had left, Emily rented a small but comfortable apartment just 2 blocks away. Grandma Betty was moved when she heard the story and how Emily had discovered her true roots. I always knew you were special, Grandma Betty said, and now I understand why. You were raised with so much love from the very beginning. Emily officially started working at the restaurant on a Monday morning. This time, she entered through the front door, wearing her uniform, an official key in her pocket, and a name tag. But the first thing she did was set the tables exactly as she had during those secret late nights. Napkins folded into swans, silverware perfectly aligned, the gentle scent of lavender in the air. Michael watched Emily work, and saw the same dedication he'd noticed on that rainy night. But now there was no sadness in her eyes. There was purpose. Regular customers quickly noticed the difference in service. Emily had a natural gift for remembering each person's preferences, making everyone feel special and welcome. The restaurant began drawing even more business. "Mr. Michael," said Mrs. Rose, a customer who had frequented the place for 15 years, "this girl has a special touch. She makes this place feel like a family home." Michael smiled. That was exactly how his father had always wanted the restaurant to be, a family home where everyone felt welcome. A few weeks later, Emily uncovered more details about her first months of life. Susan showed her a notebook that Robert had kept, with notes about her development, her preferences, her first attempts to smile. Emily slept through the night. "I think she's finally gotten used to the noise from the kitchen." Today, Emily smiled for the first time when I played classical music. Maybe she has musical talent. Emily doesn't like warm bottles. She prefers them at room temperature. These were small details that showed how deeply Robert had dedicated himself to caring for her, with tenderness and attention. "Your father truly loved me," Emily said to Michael, tears in her eyes. "You were the daughter he never had. My mother passed away when I was very young, and he never remarried. You brought life to his home in his final years." Emily decided to create a small tribute to Robert on one of the restaurant's walls. She framed the photo of him holding her as a baby and wrote beneath it, "For Robert Roberts, who taught me that home isn't a place, it's love." Customers grew curious about the photo and the tribute. Emily began sharing the story with a few regulars, and soon the tale of her homecoming spread through the neighborhood. "It's a beautiful story," said Mrs. Francis, another regular customer. "It shows some people are meant to be in certain places." The restaurant began attracting people who wanted to hear Emily's story. It wasn't tourism, but there was a different energy in the place. People felt they were part of something special. Emily made small changes that made a big difference. She started arranging fresh flower centerpieces for the tables, created a special menu for elderly customers with smaller portions and reduced prices, and set aside one evening a week for soft classical music. "Why classical music?" Michael asked. "Because of your father's note in the notebook. He believed I had musical talent. I want to honor that memory." Michael was moved by how Emily cherished every little detail of her father's memory. One afternoon, as Emily was setting the tables, she noticed an elderly woman quietly crying at a corner table. She approached gently. "Are you all right? Can I help with anything?" "I'm sorry, dear. It's just that this place reminds me so much of my childhood home. My husband brought me here on our first date 40 years ago." Emily sat beside the woman. "And where is your husband now?" "He passed 6 months ago. I come here sometimes to feel closer to him." Emily held the woman's hand. "Love never dies, Mrs. Teresa. It lingers in places and in memories. Your husband is still here with you." From that day on, Mrs. Teresa became a special guest. Emily always reserved the same table for her and spent long moments sharing stories and memories. "You have a gift," Michael told Emily. "You make people feel at home. I learned that by being cared for. When we're loved, we learn to love others." Emily also began caring for Grandma Betty in an even more special way. With financial stability, she hired a physical therapist to help with her grandmother's mobility and a private doctor to monitor her diabetes. "My dear granddaughter," Grandma Betty would say, "you've found your destiny. I always knew something special was waiting for you." "And you were always right, Grandma. Home found me." Emily discovered she had a natural talent for management. She organized staff schedules better, implemented a more efficient inventory system, and created a loyalty program for regular customers. The restaurant soon earned the highest ratings in the area on review sites. People praised not just the food, but especially the warm service and the feeling of being with family. One evening, as Emily was closing the restaurant, she found an envelope someone had left on the main table. Inside was a letter. "Dear Emily, I've been a customer here for many years. I've followed your story and was deeply moved. I wanted you to know that places like this, where people genuinely care, are rare these days. My wife and I went through a very difficult time recently, and the afternoons we spent here talking with you and feeling the warmth of the service helped us get through it. Thank you for making this place so special. A grateful customer. Emily showed the letter to Michael. See? You're doing exactly what my father always wanted, turning this place into a second home for people. It's what he did for me when I was a baby. Now it's my turn to do the same for others. Michael realized Emily hadn't just found her place in the world, she had brought back the soul the restaurant had lost when her father passed away. One afternoon, Emily was organizing the accounts when she found an old document that had gone unnoticed. It was a birth certificate in the name of Emily Thompson, but with a handwritten note on the back. The note read, "Found on March 15, 2004, at Roberts Place, San Diego, California. Baby appears healthy and well cared for. Family left a note saying they couldn't raise the child." Emily stayed silent for several minutes, absorbing the information. There had been a note. Her biological family had left an explanation. "Michael," she called, "do you know if your father kept any note that was left with me as a baby?" Michael thought for a moment. "I don't know. But he had a box with old documents in the office. We never touched it after he passed." They went to the office and found the box. Inside were restaurant records, old photos, and at the bottom a small envelope with the word Emily handwritten on it. Emily carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a note in delicate handwriting. "To whoever finds this baby, her name is Emily, and she was born on March 10th. She is 4 days old. I can't take care of her, but I know she's a special child. Please give her the love I can't." Inside the blanket is a bracelet that belonged to my mother. "It's the only valuable thing I can leave her. Thank you for taking care of my girl. A mother who loves her." Emily searched the box and found a small golden bracelet, very simple but well preserved. "This bracelet," Emily said, emotional. "My adoptive mother always said I came with it, but I never knew where it was from." Michael watched Emily holding the bracelet. It was clear this small object was her last connection to her birth mother. "Emily, your birth mother left you here because she knew you'd be cared for. She chose a place where there would be love. And she was right. I was loved by 3 different families. By my birth family, who protected me even if they couldn't raise me. By your father, who took care of me like his own, and by my adoptive parents who gave me everything." Emily started wearing the bracelet every day. It was her way of honoring everyone who had been part of her journey. The restaurant continued to thrive. Emily constantly introduced new ideas, always thinking of ways to make people feel more welcome. She created a special monthly night for couples celebrating anniversaries, a cozy corner for children, and even a meal delivery program for seniors who couldn't leave their homes. "You've transformed this place," Susan said to Emily. "Robert would be so proud." "I hope so. I try to honor everything he taught me, even if I don't consciously remember it." Emily also began studying business administration in night classes. She wanted to further her education to live up to the trust Michael had placed in her. "You don't need to study more," said Michael. "You've already shown you have a natural talent for this. I want to study because I believe we can always improve, and because I want this place to grow and thrive for many years." One weekend, Emily organized a surprise party for Michael. It was the 1-year anniversary of her official return to the restaurant. "Why a party?" asked Michael. "Because you gave me back my family," replied Emily. "This place, these people, this story. You gave me back who I truly am." The party brought together staff, regular customers, and some neighbors. Susan prepared a special cake, and Grandma Betty, who had grown stronger with medical care, gave a heartfelt speech. "My granddaughter always knew there was something special waiting for her," said Grandma Betty, "and now we all know what it was. It was the love that never died." During the party, Emily made an announcement. "I want to propose something to you all. How about we start a tradition? Every year on the day I was found here, we throw a party to celebrate the families we choose, not just the ones we're born into." The idea was met with enthusiasm. The first chosen family celebration took place the following month and drew people from all over the city who had similar stories of adoption, reunions, or unconventional families. Emily began receiving letters from people who related to her story. Mothers who had given children up for adoption, adoptive parents, children searching for their roots. "Maybe we can help others," Emily said to Michael. "Create a support network for families in similar situations." "How so?" "We can use the restaurant as a meeting place, start a support group, offer guidance to people going through what I went through." Michael thought the idea was wonderful. Emily created a group that met once a month at the restaurant. It was a safe space where people could share their stories and find support. The group grew quickly. Emily became a kind of informal counselor, helping people navigate issues of identity, loss, and reunion. "You've found your calling," said Susan. "It's not just about restaurant management, it's about caring for people." "I've learned that caring for people and managing a restaurant are the same thing," replied Emily. "Both involve creating a space where people feel safe and loved." One afternoon, Emily was serving a table when a woman around 40 approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, are you Emily, the one who was adopted as a baby?" "Yes, that's me. How can I help you?" The woman began to cry. I think I'm your sister." Emily's heart raced. She asked the woman to sit and called for Michael. "What do you mean, my sister?" "My name is Amanda. My mother told me on her hospital bed, before she passed, that she had another daughter she had to give up for adoption 20 years ago. She said she left the baby at a restaurant in San Diego." Emily held Amanda's hand, trying to steady her emotions. "Your mother, what was her name?" "Mary Thompson. She was only 16 when you were born. Our family didn't accept the pregnancy, and she had to leave home." Emily remembered the note her birth mother had left, the delicate handwriting, the youth implied in the words. "And you?" "I was born 2 years later. My mother managed to stabilize her life, married my father and raised me. But she never stopped thinking about the daughter she had to give up." Emily began to cry. She was finally meeting someone from her birth family. Did she say anything about me?" "She said you were beautiful, that you had very expressive eyes, and that you hardly ever cried. She also said it was the hardest decision of her life, but she knew it was the right one." Amanda showed Emily a photo of Mary Thompson when she was young. The resemblance was striking. "Our mother kept this bracelet her whole life," said Amanda, holding up an identical bracelet to the one Emily wore. "She said it was to give to you if she ever found you." Emily looked at the two bracelets identical and felt like another piece of her life's puzzle was falling into place. "Amanda, is our mother... She passed away 6 months ago, but she spent her last years searching for you. When she found out she was sick, she made me promise to keep looking." The two sisters spent hours talking, learning each other's stories, discovering similarities and differences. Amanda shared that Mary had always dreamed of reuniting with Emily, but could never uncover what had happened to her after the adoption. "She would have been so happy to know you found a good family and came back to where your life began," Amanda said. Emily introduced Amanda to her whole new family: Michael, Susan, Grandma Betty, and the staff at the restaurant. Amanda was welcomed with the same warmth they all had for Emily. "Now you have 2 families," said Michael. "The one you built here and the biological one that found you." Emily realized her life had come full circle. She had found her roots, her biological family, her adoptive family was honored in memory, and her chosen family at the restaurant was stronger than ever. Amanda started visiting the restaurant regularly and became part of the support group Emily had created. She had her own story of searching for identity, having grown up knowing she had a sister lost somewhere. "It's amazing how fate works," Amanda said. "You spent years coming back to this place without knowing why, and I spent years looking for you without knowing where." "Maybe some people are just meant to find each other," Emily replied. The restaurant became even more special after Amanda's arrival. The two sisters worked together, organizing events and tending to customers, each contributing their own skills. Emily began writing her story, not to publish but to record everything she'd learned about family, belonging, and the many forms of love. "You should publish this," Michael said. after reading some excerpts. So many people would relate to your journey. Maybe one day. For now, I want to live this story, not just write about it. On the first anniversary of the Chosen family celebration, over 200 people attended. There were stories of adoption, blended families, friendships that became family, and people who found home in unexpected places. Emily gave a heartfelt speech. Family isn't defined by blood or genes. It's defined by choice, by care, by being there in the important moments. All of you are my family, just as I hope to be family to you. During the celebration, a special surprise happened. The mayor showed up to present a plaque recognizing the restaurant for its contribution to the community. This establishment has become a symbol of welcome and brotherly love in our city, the mayor said. Emily Roberts Thompson represents the best of our community. Emily had officially taken the last name Roberts in honor of Robert, while keeping Thompson for her roots. After the party, Emily, Amanda, Michael, and Grandma Betty stayed at the restaurant, talking about how much had changed in just 2 years. Who would have thought that scared girl I caught setting tables in the middle of the night would become the heart of a whole community, Michael said. I always knew she was special, Grandma Betty replied. Even as a little girl, she had something different about her. Now we know it was love that she carried inside her. Emily looked around the restaurant, seeing the photos of Robert on the wall, the table where she had been photographed as a baby, the customers who had become family, the staff who had welcomed her from day one. Do you know what the most amazing thing about this whole story is? Emily said. What? Everyone asked. It's that I spent 20 years searching for my place in the world, and it was here all along, waiting for me. And we were waiting for you too, said Michael, without even knowing. Amanda held Emily's hand. Our mother used to say that when we give love to the world, it always comes back to us in some way. I think your story proves that. Emily smiled, feeling a peace she had never known before. She had found all the pieces of her life's puzzle, her origins, her biological family, the memory of who had cared for her as a baby, the family that had adopted and loved her, and the new family she had chosen and built. Love never gets lost, Emily said. It just changes form. That night, after everyone had left, Emily made her final rounds through the restaurant as she always did. But this time she wasn't a secret intruder trying to connect with lost memories. She was the official guardian of the place where her life had begun and begun again. She straightened the tables one last time, folded the napkins into swans, aligned the silverware perfectly, and spritzed lavender on the linens. But now she did it all in the open, with pride, as part of the family that had always been hers by right. When she turned off the lights and locked the door, Emily looked up at the starry sky and whispered, "Thank you, Robert. Thank you for loving me when I was just a lost baby. Thank you for waiting for me to come home." And then she walked to the apartment where Grandma Betty was waiting, knowing that the next morning she would return to the place she had always belonged, to keep caring for the people who, like her, were searching for a home where they would be loved exactly as they were. End of story. So, what did you think of this story of meetings, losses, and reunions? Emily managed to find not only her origins, but also to build a new family based on love and choice. Tell us in the comments, do you believe people are destined to find their true home? Have you ever had a similar experience of discovering you belonged somewhere? Your heartfelt words mean so much to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other touching stories like this one.